that. So we're going to move on into our next session. We're really excited to have this next speaker. One quick thing about the speaker, and then I'll just share a little bit more and we'll introduce him to the stage, is about 2 or maybe 3 years ago, we had Michael Sampson, who's our upcoming speaker, come to Central Desktop and really help us as an organization sort of figure out how we could develop repeatable techniques to help our customers thoroughly get the user adoption that they were looking for. And so he helped us deconstruct our at that time, implementation methodology, and really helped us challenge things. Came away with some tremendous insights, essentially overhauled our entire implementation process as a result of that. And so really proud to have Michael Sampson on the stage. Michael is probably one of the foremost experts on how to actually get organizations to get the buy-in that you need, so that instead of just buying the tool and hoping for the best that people actually use it, really identifying sort of techniques to help folks really get the most out of a collaboration solution. He's met and worked with a ton of really important customers, authored a number of books that we've all read in our organization. We actually have that as reading for our implementation team as well. But definitely want to welcome Michael Sampson to the stage, so please join me in welcoming him. Knock him dead, sir.
Well, it's great to be here. I'm from New Zealand, so the good news is that it's finally 5:30 in the morning in New Zealand, and I get to stand up at a reasonable hour and talk to you. It's kind of challenging getting up at 11 o'clock your time last night my time last night, in order to get today started, but it's great to be here. So what I want to talk about in this session prior to lunch is make or break user adoption strategies. And there are 4 S's that I want to focus on in the time that we have together. First of all, to look at the situation with user adoption. Secondly, to look at some strategies to help us make user adoption work. The third S is to look at some survey results around user adoption and different approaches and what works and what doesn't. And then the fourth S, it finishes with S, is to look at some experiences. You're supposed to laugh at that. I mean, it's 5:30 in the morning for me. If I can make a joke, you should be able to laugh more, given that it's 11:30 here in Austin, Texas. Is to look at some experiences from some Central Desktop customers around how they have approached this question of user adoption. And I was very grateful for the opportunity to interview from New Zealand some customers using Central Desktop. So let's start with the situation. When we look out across the landscape, there's a few things that we would notice. Number one is that vendors have released some amazing tools, and it's great to be here hosted by Central Desktop and PGI today, and the tools that they have available that many of you are using in your work. The second thing is that business partners are ready and available to help organizations to be successful with the tools that they acquire. Or in the case of Central Desktop, that there is an entire organization within this company focused on driving customer success, which I think is a fantastic investment by Central Desktop. And third is that there are some significant opportunities available to forward-thinking organizations to take on board, to make use of new ways of collaborating, ways of bringing in freelancers into an organization, ways of leveraging skills across the world, ways of driving innovation, as Jacob has talked to us about so aptly earlier today. However, whether you're using Central Desktop or something else, great technology is not enough in and of itself. Back in 2009, one of your research organizations up here in the United States said, which 3 of these are the biggest impediments to wider implementation of Enterprise 2.0 in your organization? And I want you to look at the bottom of the chart first. This is 2009. Immaturity of technology was the least important factor, the least impediment. But if we jump to the top, we have things like lack of understanding, a corporate culture that doesn't support collaboration and working in these new ways, that it's not a high enough priority for us as an organization. These are the impediments that stand in our way. Another way of thinking about this is that in the mid-90s, a consulting firm out of Boston called NetAge did some work about being successful with virtual teams. And one of the big conclusions that they drew was that it was 10% technology and 90% people. So I asked the principles there if they'd ever broken down that 90% people and 10% technology, and they said, no, we've just kind of talked about it as a summary sentence. So I said, what do you think about this breakdown? So the big idea is theirs, the words are mine with their validation and sign-off. So in terms of the 10% technology, the product that you're using, the features that it has, it does make some contribution towards success. But the 90% people is much more around the business driver. Why are we doing this? The culture of the team, the level of interpersonal trust, the degree of interdependence that exists within the organization and within the teams that are there, the incentives, the social patterns that are in place. Another way of thinking about this comes from a gentleman who worked at AT&T a decade ago. He said if you have good infrastructure and highly responsive applications, then the most that you can do is avoid failure. If you want to drive success or chase success, on the other hand, there's a whole range of other things that you need to do. Client support, business acceptance, the way that you deal with training, the way that you engage with the people inside your organization, the best practices, the user manuals, the customer service that you use to drive success. These are the things that will help you get beyond merely avoiding failure in your organization. If we think about this idea of organizational performance and look back in the mid-90s when the academics were talking about how to use information systems, information technology to drive organizational performance, the early models said, spend money, great things happen. It's like, yes, direct link. Now, once they stepped outside their ivory towers and actually tried this in the real world, they realized there was something fluffy and marshmallow-like in the middle, which was once you spend money, depending on what you build with that, depending on the impacts that those assets have in your organization, that's what's going to drive organizational performance. So it's not a direct link between spend money, something great happens. It's an indirect link that is spend money and then kind of like, and then a miracle happens, depending on how well it goes and how well your people embrace and use it, then you'll get that uplift and uptick in organizational performance. In one of my books called Collaboration Roadmap, You've Got the Technology, Now What? I talk about a roadmap to success. And these are the 7 stages that I talk about for collaboration tools. Really understand the technology. What are the opportunities that it provides to us as an organization to do new things, to improve the way that we work? Outline the vision. What are we trying to achieve? Organizational efficiency, process effectiveness, innovation, better communication. Accept that technology is a small factor in success, and I've given you an insight into some of the thinking around there. D, determine your governance approach. M, make every effort to engage the business, to really understand the workflow, to really understand how you can improve and help people get their work done in better and more effective ways. A, apply intentional energy to adoption, and then P, pursue increasing value. I could talk about this all day, but I have a flight back to New Zealand to get this afternoon, so we're just going to talk about this A here called apply intentional energy to adoption. When we think about adoption, and it was interesting, your question, Nick, around driving behavioral change, adoption doesn't just happen. If you don't get adoption, then you don't get the value that the organization is seeking to get from new ways of working and new tools. Most business cases assume that adoption will just be 100%, and that should be a big oops moment for all of us. This has to be crafted, this has to be designed, this has to be worked on intentionally. Poor adoption is a very common issue. When we look across the information systems landscape, when we look across various subsectors that we're interested in, collaboration, the hard part is getting people to use new collaboration tools in a productive way. Social software, Forrester says 77% of employees never use their enterprise social network. Business intelligence, more than 60% of BI failures can be attributed to a lack of end-user adoption. All of these tools promise tremendous capabilities, tremendous value to organizations, and yet if you can't lead people to using them effectively, if you can't drive success within your organization, then you're not going to get the value from that. In one of my other books, the book that Mark referred to, user adoption strategies, shifting second wave people to new collaboration tools, I talk about this 4-stage model to making adoption work in organizations. Stage 1, winning attention. Stage 2, cultivating basic concepts. Stage 3, enlivening applicability. And stage 4, making it real. We've talked about the situation. We've done a very quick, wide gaze in terms of what's going on in this space. Let's now come down a level and talk about some strategies that you can use to make adoption happen within your organization. In stage 1 of this model, winning attention, most people in your organization do not care about the features or the functions or even the product that you're introducing into your organization. If you turn up and say, we've bought Central Desktop, most people are not going to go, yes. Some people will, but most are not going to do that. Most are not going to go back, sit around the dinner table at night and go, hey family, we got Central Desktop today. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. So how do you win the attention of people for whom new capabilities, new products are not of interest? Some of the strategies that we have include exemplar stories. These are real case studies of how other people in your organization are getting value and benefit from making use of Central Desktop in their work. Real people, real situations that give social proof about the use of it within your organization. And what you're looking for in sharing these case studies is for others in your organization to say, I want that. I want a piece of that action. I could see some of that happening in my work as well. And so you're talking about these on your intranet, in newsletters, in company meetings. The panel here today has talked about some of the examples of where it's made a real difference in their work. Those sort of case studies should be talked about internally as well because they help with this first stage of winning attention. A second strategy is called real-to-life scenarios. Whereas exemplar stories are a real thing that's happening in your organization, a real-to-life scenario is a made-up potential example of how you could make use of Central Desktop or another tool. So if you have case studies, go exemplar stories. If you don't, so you're just beginning your process, real-to-life scenarios gives you a way of saying, when we're here in this agency, when we've got our creative people, we've got our account executives, we've got our clients, we've got our freelancers, at the moment it's absolute chaos. We've got emails going back and forward, there's no visibility, there's no accountability, there's no transparency. If we use Central Desktop, these are the sorts of things that we would be able to drive as outcomes in our organization. Talk through how workflow changes. A day in the life of customer services, a project in the day of a research team, a client brief in the context of an agency. And what you're trying to do here is to show the possibilities of the tool embedded in the work reality of the people that you are talking to. A third strategy, and we've heard about the use of this, is senior executive support, where you have senior executives as involved as other people in the use of the tool in their work. It sets a couple of really important notes. One is, if a senior executive can learn this, I probably can too. And if they're using it, I probably should too. And when you have senior executives that are making use of a workspace to run their meetings, to share their documentation, to prepare board meeting papers and so on, it helps with setting a particular tone and tenor inside organizations. In stage 2, cultivating basic concepts. The purpose here is to explain how the tool works and how you could make use of it in your work. One of the strategies in stage 2 is called classroom training. And your intent in doing classroom training then is to teach the what of Central Desktop. What is this tool? How does it work? How can you make use of it? What is a workspace? What are these other capabilities in here? Now, classroom training clearly can be many different things depending on how you design it, with internal trainers or external trainers, with small groups or large groups, with short duration or large duration. So there's many different varieties of it. Classroom training is very good where you have dense concentrations of people. Now, I didn't say concentrations of dense people, so just make sure that you heard me correctly. In any classroom environment, the more that you can do hands-on training for people, hands on the keyboard, trying things out, examining how workflow changes, then you make classroom training a whole lot more effective. Web-based training is a second strategy that you can make use of in this stage 2. And there are some design variations around web-based training: live webinars, recorded webinars, or full e-learning courseware. Where you have people spread across the world, this is a good strategy to help teach the what of a tool like Central Desktop. A third option, a third strategy in stage 2 is pages on the intranet, where you publish help material that people can access, read, review, and see how they can make use of a tool like Central Desktop in their work. Usually, this is very text-heavy, but in the world that we live in today, it's fairly easy to include screen recordings and other material that sort of blends this more back into the web-based training approach. If you can, don't just go the text-based approach. And you have opportunities to also include social engagement within pages on the intranet, showing the name of the person who wrote this or prepared this, so that if someone has a question, they can go back and seek further clarification. In stage 3, then, the purpose of this is around enlivening applicability. Now, I've done the user adoption workshop quite often in Europe, and people in Europe really struggle to say this word enlivening. So if I ever rewrite the book, I'm going to find a different term. But anyway, you're an American crowd. I'm sure you can handle this word. Enlivening applicability is all about exploring how a particular group or team could make use of the tool in their work. What's the value that they can get from doing this? Some of the strategies that you have available in stage 3 include facilitated group reimagining, which isn't a great phrase to try and say after having 6 tequilas or other forms of alcohol. But the question is, what are the activities that this group does, and how could we reimagine or reinterpret those in light of new technology and new opportunities and possibilities before us? How do we reimagine the way that people get work done? A second strategy in this stage 3 is a sandbox for experimentation, a place for people to try out Central Desktop, to explore what it could look like, to try it on a trial project, to see how they could make use of this in their work outside of a real project with real deadlines, with real customers, with real project managers bearing down on them. How could I use this? How do I understand this tool? Another strategy in stage 3 is easy first steps, helping people to accomplish the first things, setting their profile, uploading a picture, creating subscriptions. Those of you who have downloaded the Collabosphere app for this conference will have been encouraged to go through some of these easy first steps. You've done this, now do this. Upload your picture. Oh, if you take a photo, you'll get 2 points. If you fill out a survey, you'll get 4. Ooh. So the application is leading you through a process so that you can start making use of it. And it changes it from being a system that's out there that's a bit scary into something that I have a little bit of myself in. And then over time, you extend and develop on that. And then finally, in stage 3, you have a strategy called one-to-one coaching or over-the-shoulder watching, which is going and looking at how someone does their work, the tools that they use, the processes that they follow. And while you're observing them, clearly you do need their permission to do this, as opposed to just standing there looking. What are you doing? Oh, I'm watching what you're doing. So permission is very important for this. But you're giving them in the flow recommendations or possibilities for how they could improve the way that work gets done in light of new tools being available. Stage 1, winning attention. Stage 2, cultivating basic concepts. Stage 3, enlivening applicability. Stage 4, making it real. This is the stage where it becomes real and personally relevant to an individual, to a team, to a group, to your organization. Some of the strategies that we have in this stage 4 then are stop doing, start doing patterns. The way that we do a particular activity, we've done it an old way. We as a group decide not to do it like that anymore, and we will start doing it in a new way. We've heard, I think, from Leopard, the example of people trying to get around the process that basically they have a stop doing, start doing pattern in there, that if someone comes and says, can you do this for me? What's the answer? Stick it in Central Desktop. If someone sends an email around to say, can you do this for me? What's the answer? Stick it in Central Desktop. So this is an example of where that organization is making use of this strategy, even if they don't know what it's called, to drive change and new behaviors. Internal user group is a second strategy that we could use in stage 4. This is about bringing together the people in your organization that are making use of Central Desktop to talk about how it's going, what's working, what's not working, how could we extend it, what are the things that are problematic for you that we should go back to the support people at Central Desktop about. How do we make this work better and more effectively for us as an organization? And then the final strategy that I'll touch on is zero other options. This is where we treat Central Desktop, or the tool that we're using, as the place that we get our work done. It's where the meeting notes go. It's where you go to see your task allocations. It's where the latest version of the creative brief is, the documents that you're looking at. This is where we work now. We don't have stuff in other places. And if you have other systems that you have previously been working with or through, they get turned off. They get thrown out the window. They get deleted. They get archived. You can't do work that way anymore because Central Desktop is the way that we work here in this organization. Now, I've talked about a whole variety of strategies, and I think it's useful to do that to highlight that there are many possibilities and opportunities for you in your work. What I'd like to do now is report back on some survey results around the use and effectiveness of these strategies. When I did the second edition of the User Adoption Strategies book in 2012, I redid the global survey. There were 186 respondents. 105 of those respondents were using a particular product. In terms of the employee count, too fast. Thought it was going to give me a red dot. No. So just over 30% were at organizations of between 1,000 and 5,000 employees. Just under 25% were at an organization of over 10,000 employees. In terms of use of the strategies, and here we've got some of the strategies that we've talked about, classroom training, one-to-one coaching, and so on. In terms of use, the most highly used strategy was pages on the intranet, followed by web-based training, and then followed by third equal between classroom training, embedded champion, and executive sponsorship. And when you put that on my model, you get executive sponsorship at stage 1, 3 strategies at stage 2, and embedded champion at stage 3. However, use and effectiveness are 2 very different attributes or characteristics. So the next question in the survey was, on a scale of 1 to 5, how effective were these strategies? A 1 was we strongly disagree, through to a 5 of we strongly agree. So when we go down in the same way and say the most highly effective strategy was one-to-one coaching, followed by executive sponsorship, followed by embedded champion, then by easy first steps, then real-to-life scenarios, then internal user group. And you get a somewhat nuanced perspective then when you come through and re-put that on the model. Executive sponsorship we retain. Real-to-life scenarios is added. Those 3 strategies that were so highly used at stage 2 have dropped off. We've got one-to-one coaching at 3. We retain embedded champion. We gain easy first steps at 3, and we gain internal user group. So the conclusion out of that data set is that if you're using executive sponsorship, if you're using embedded champion, then keep doing so. They're highly used, they're highly effective. But by the same token, if you're not using one-to-one coaching, easy first steps, real-to-life scenarios, internal user group, then you have an opportunity to increase your use of those strategies because they're very effective. The second data set was by about half of the respondents. This respondent base was much more in large organizations, so just under 50% were in organizations of over 10,000 employees. Same approach, most highly used, executive sponsorship, internal user group, embedded champion, one-to-one coaching, and easy first steps. And when you put that on the model, executive sponsorship, 3 at stage 3, internal user group at stage 4. The question around effectiveness then, most highly effective, executive sponsorship, followed by one-to-one coaching, followed by embedded champion, then real-to-life scenarios, then stop doing, start doing patterns, then easy first steps. We retain executive sponsorship at 1. We gain real-to-life scenarios. One-to-one coaching increases in effectiveness at stage 3. Easy first steps is there. And stop doing, start doing patterns is added at stage 4. Same kind of conclusion. If you're making use of executive sponsorship, embedded champion, easy first steps, then keep doing so. They're highly used, they're highly effective. But by the same token, if you're not making use of one-to-one coaching, real-to-life scenarios, stop doing, start doing patterns, then you have an opportunity to increase your use of those. Some experiences. So earlier this month, I had an opportunity to interview 3 Central Desktop customers for about half an hour to learn about their approach to the use of Central Desktop and their adoption approaches. And Sarah, the situation for this agency was chaos in managing workflow across the firm. They had a previous tool, a previous way of doing things, but it wasn't helping them to get to that place that they wanted to get to. The business need a fit-for-purpose tool for projects that gave cross-firm visibility that helped with workflow planning and would enable them to leverage the internal and external resources that they had to get more work done with current resources. The solution, Central Desktop. In terms of user adoption then, at stage 1 there was clear executive sponsorship. The COO signed it off and was really keen that it was used, and the CFO was always saying, we've paid for it, how's it going? We've paid for it, how's it going? And so it sets a context within the organization. In terms of stage 2, there was some training provided and a workplace set up in Central Desktop for people to go and look at how they could make use of it. What is this tool? How do I use it? No particular strategies that I identified in stage 3. And then in stage 4, the 0 other options strategy. Older systems were shut down when Central Desktop was brought on board. Leopard, we've had 2 people from Leopard on the panel before. Situation for them was ad hoc processes and use of different tools across the agency to get work done. The business need, one place for everything. Some of the things that they were looking for were improved organisation, better transparency, better accountability across the agency, and the ability to customise a tool for their workflow, their changing and evolving and developing understanding of how things were going was of real importance for them. And so Central Desktop, again, was the solution. In terms of user adoption, executive sponsorship, mandatory usage noted from executives, training, a number of approaches in here, including one-to-one and phone-based training. It was also very targeted to role. So if you were a creative, if you're an account executive, then you had different requirements and needs from what you could learn. In stage 3, one-to-one coaching and some facilitated group reimagining thrown in. And then stage 4, 0 other options. There was a cut-off date set on launch, and all new projects had to be created in Central Desktop from there. The third example was Fleishman Hillard out of Toronto. Their situation, very similar to the previous 2, was around ad hoc processes for managing work in the Toronto office. The need for them was a way to centralise work and help with managing workflows. Solution, Central Desktop. From an adoption perspective, we see this idea of executive sponsorship coming through again in stage 1. The general manager scheduled the training. The requirement, the invitation came from him or her. In stage 2, classroom training, very short 15-minute classroom training was provided to people in the Toronto office, and a written guide was brought in and customised for that office. Their intent longer term is to have some longer training for people in order to leverage more and more of the capabilities. And then in stage 3, facilitated group reimagining. I told you I had 4 S's. This is the 5th by the looks of things. So in terms of make or break user adoption, my view is that the vendor responsibility is a good product. Improving the product from customer feedback, improving the product based on new opportunities being identified. The organizational responsibility, on the other hand, is adoption and effective use. And my question for you, which you can talk about over lunch, is what are you doing about adoption? How are you approaching this issue in order to leverage the capabilities that you have available? Thank you.